Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now today we're taking a look at another plant species that we see commonly in bioretention systems, or sort of commonly anyway, and I'll explain that in a second. So the species that we're talking about today are Gahnias, and you can see some coming into shot just here. So here we can see one just here. So obviously it's a clumping plant with strappy leaves, and you'll often be able to identify them because they'll have a seed head of sorts, like we can see kind of coming through shot there. Now, Gahnias are often referred to as a saw-edged sedge, and that is because of their leaves here. So if you were to grab a leaf and try and run your hand down towards the center of the plant, like my thumb is just there, you'll find that there's a whole bunch, you get a whole bunch of resistance. It's like tiny little Velcro or tooths on a saw that resist and try and stop you. And it's on both the top and bottom of the leaf and along the sides as well. So that's a really good indication that it's a Gahnia that you're looking at, as opposed to something like a Lomandra over here, which is also a clumping strappy leafed plant. But in the case of a Lomandra, beautiful smooth leaves, no problem whatsoever touching that. But back to the Gahnias over here. So I believe what we're looking at here, there's a few different types of Gahnias. I believe the ones that we're looking at here are Gahnia siberiana. Now, I've got to admit, I'm not super familiar with Gahnias, and that's because a lot of my experience out and about with bioretention systems was in Logan, which is the city council immediately to the south of Brisbane. And Logan is a little bit west, it's not coastal, it's inland. And I saw lots of bioretention systems when I was there where Gahnias were specified in the planting mix, but invariably in Logan anyway, they almost always died. Like 98%, I'm just estimating, right? But 98% failure rate of them. So I never really saw a heck of a lot of them and didn't have a lot of need to develop plant ID on them. But having said that, this is definitely a Gahnia. It's just a question for me of whether it's Siberiana, but I think it is because I've got the planting spec for this basin and it says Siberiana, so there's a fairly good chance that it is. Anyway, so other things to be aware of here. We can get a really nice look at a seed head here. You can also see maybe just if this thing will focus. Sorry about that, you're not getting very good focus. So obviously the seed head there is largely black, but there are tiny little red fruits on it that you might just be able to pick out. They're like the size of an ant. It's another good indication of the Gahnias. But anyway, back to their use. So they, obviously they can do well because there's plenty of them in this particular bioretention basin here. And we're in the eastern suburbs of Brisbane here. So definitely a wetter area than Logan. And I've also heard of them doing really quite well in bioretention systems on the north coast, to the north of Brisbane. So again, and you see them in the wild in that sort of environment because they're a coastal heath plant. And so I wonder whether Logan, something about possibly just too dry. Logan does get less rainfall than where we are here and then the north coast. So I'm suspecting that in Logan they just weren't getting enough water or weren't getting it consistently enough. But nonetheless, it's worthwhile knowing about this plant because, if you are in an area where it can grow, it's obviously it's a pretty cool, attractive plant. It's got the nice feature. The sawtooth leaf is pretty cool, but it's also, probably more importantly here, the good lesson, which is we need to pick plants for the right area. So there are lots of guidelines out there that'll say, that'll give a list of plant species. But the thing with guidelines is that, we're trying to cater for a million different scenarios. And we need to use common sense, right? If you were designing some sort of bridge, and you're deciding whether it's going to span the creek or whether you're going to use a culvert or this sort of thing, right? There'll be a whole bunch of guidance out there, but ultimately you need to use your common sense. You need to use your nous to figure out what's right for the situation. And the same thing applies here with bioretention plants. We can't just go smacking in the same thing every single time in different locations, different aspects, and expecting it to work. One plant might work really well in open sun, but not so well in the shade, and vice versa, right? And I think the Gahnia is a really good example of this. So keep it in mind, it's an attractive plant. If you can get it to grow because you're in the right area, sweet. If you're a maintenance person who comes across this, no matter where you are, and it's growing, it's probably meant to be there. It's a cool plant. Obviously, you know, I'm talking from Southeast Queensland context here. I'm sure somewhere in the world, like anything, any plant that's not where it's meant to be is a weed, right? So I'm sure there's somewhere in the world where this plant is a weed. But in the context that I'm used to, it's not a weed, it's a lovely native. And yeah, cool. So we'll just spin this back around. Okay, that's it for our quick intro to Gahnias, the plant that I don't know as much about as I should because they all died when I had a lot to do with them. No, kidding. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to know more about what it is that we do at Ideanthro, you can find us online at ideanthro.com. We post all our episodes there, our projects, other interesting stuff about us. It's also where you can go to sign up to our mailing list. So we have a mailing list really just to send out every time we post a new video to let you know that it's up. If you go to ideanthro.com, scroll down to the bottom, you'll find the mailing list. We're also on Facebook. You can like the page to keep up to date with what we're doing. That's facebook.com/Ideanthro. And you can find us on YouTube where you can subscribe to the channel, which is where we post all our videos. Okay, cool. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, have a great time. See ya.